Hello YouTube, and welcome to my first video for quite a while. This one's going to focus on how to get your XSR700, MT07 or FZ07 if you're American, how to repair it if it won't start. Now you can see my bike as it is with the seat removed. It's been off the road for a few months now. I had an issue with it which is exactly the same as an issue I had before when it was in warranty. And the issue was last time I'd washed the bike, and then after cleaning it I'd started it up and left it running, left it idling for about 10 minutes and switched it off just for the heat and everything to evaporate any moisture that might have got inside. Then when I went to start it the next day, it just wouldn't start. There was a little click every time I pushed the starter button, and that was it. It went back to the dealer, and the dealer ended up replacing the starter solenoid, which I believe is under here, the starter relay, which I've actually stripped off the bike. This is it. It's quite a chunky thing, and that goes in behind here. And the starter switch at the moment, which normally goes here. I'm in the process of refitting it at the moment. They fixed it. They ended up actually replacing the entire wiring loom at the bike as well, because they said there was a few issues with that. And the Yamaha dealer said it was the worst wiring loom he'd ever seen, which surprised me somewhat, but whatever. That was near the end of its 2-year warranty. Then I rode the bike for another few months and really enjoyed it. And I must stress that despite some of the issues I've had with this machine, I still do really like it as a motorbike. But then what happened? Yes, then I fitted an aftermarket exhaust, which you may have seen in some of my other videos, the Arrow exhaust down there. I also got the ECU flashed at the same time to make the most out of that exhaust. Again, rode it brilliantly for a few months, no issues at all. Then I put it in the garage for the winter, left it a couple of months, went to start it again, and the engine revved really highly, which it quite often does when you first start the bike, but then it should settle down to an idle once it gets warm. This didn't though, it just kept revving and revving and revving, and then when I turned the ignition off and then switched it on again, it wouldn't start again. And it started showing the exact same symptoms that it did last time. It would make a little click from the solenoid, but not actually start again. Unfortunately now the bike's out of warranty, so what do? Do I send it to the dealer and pay some massive fee, knowing they'll probably have to work on the bike for quite a few hours? It's a cheapish bike, even brand new. I've not exactly got thousands of pounds to throw at it, so what I've done is I'm trying to fix it myself. I had a look at the starter switch, and yet again, like last time, I couldn't believe it. The switch is only a couple of months old now, but it was sticking, which I think from looking at internet forums and stuff, quite a few of you have experienced. You put it into run, and then you put it into start, and it would stick there and not easily spring back to run. These switches, I can't really tell. I've tried lubricating it, cleaning it, all sorts, and it seems once it started sticking, it's very difficult to repair. So what I've actually done is get a replacement off eBay. This is a second-hand one, seems to work quite well. It just plugs in behind the headlight. You just take these 2 bolts off either side of the headlight, lift the headlight away, and then you should quite easily be able to trace the wire to that switch. It just tucks in down there behind the wiring loom, clips into that clip, and then in a minute I shall fit it back onto the handlebar there. So that should hopefully solve the starter switch issue. I'm not sure if this could have caused the problem in the first place. Maybe when it was running it was sticking there and holding the starter in. Maybe that's damaged something. Who knows? I have actually got the Haynes manual for this bike, and I ran a few electrical tests on the starter relay. There's quite a few tests you can run on the different pins, and it did seem to show that the one I had again was faulty again. So again, second hand, got one of these off the internet. Looks fairly good condition. I've used the MT07 one because it should be identical for this bike. If you want to buy these parts brand new, they do cost a lot. I think the starter switch assembly is about £90, and this relay, I can't remember now, but it was a lot as well. It was about £80 or £90 as well. The only thing I haven't bought is the solenoid, which I believe is under here, which I am hoping still is working. Okay, so I'm now going to fit these parts. To remove the relay, what I did was remove this panel, which you can see in one of my other videos, and then got my hands behind this assembly, pulled the rubber casing up, and then disconnected this white clip here. It wasn't too difficult to do. The manuals do actually recommend that you remove a lot of the stuff that's in the way. I think they recommend you remove this half of the petrol tank, but I managed to do it without doing that. Removing the switch again, fairly straightforward, just a few screws underneath, it separates into two and then you unplug it. And so now I'm going to refit these parts and see if it's fixed my problem. Okay, so I've now fitted those two replacement parts. Apologies for the gloom, the lights in my garage aren't working at the moment. Fitted this starter switch. I didn't bother replacing any of the electrical connections, it's just screws back together. There's a little locating nipple on the lower part, and there's these two, let me show you, these two connectors here for the brake light switch. And then it plugs in. I've got the headlight removed out of the way now, so you can see behind it, it just plugs in here. One thing I've noticed is there's a lot of electrical connectors behind the headlight. They're not very well waterproofed at all. They've got this kind of rubber flap in the way. A lot of the terminals are all exposed, and for some of the other connectors under there as well. It may be worth you using some electrical tape or some grease or something to try and waterproof this area a lot better, because I wasn't that impressed when I saw it. And then I did get frustrated trying to replace the relay behind there. Couldn't remember how I did it, and I started actually trying to remove the side cover of this, which I believe isn't actually too difficult. But then I remembered to get in there properly, you just turn the handlebars fully on kind of a right hand turn lock, and that gives you a bit of extra space to do that. But I would recommend anyway that you do follow the proper instructions and remove this half. It would make it easier. So now I've got those two bits in position, I'm going to have a go, see if I can get her started. Right, she's turned on. I've checked she's got coolant, she's got oil, she's not got a lot of fuel, but there is quite a bit left even after it starts showing empty. Time to see if anything happens. No. Absolutely nothing, which is a disappointment. But as I can hear, you go to start it, and can you hear that? That tiny little click is coming from the starter relay, which makes me wonder if it is the starter relay after all. So I suppose that's on to the next part to change. And about a week later I'm back onto the starter relay. So the starter relay is under this plastic cover which you can lift up, and you can see it has a fuse there, two 30 amp fuses. I think one of them's actually a spare. I think it's this one under there that is the in use one. And you also have the positive feed from the battery, and then the negative feed as well that goes down to the starter motor. So obviously the relay works by small current. When you move the starter switch into the run position, it sends a small current into the relay, which then flips the relay inside and connects the big current through down to the starter. And then when the bike starts, you let go of the spring release, it goes back into the run position, and the relay is off. I have a feeling what's happened with this bike, and what happens with a few MT07s from what I've seen, is that the starter switch, as I've described before, can get stuck in the run position. So the engine can be running, the full current is still going through the relay, and driving the starter at the same time that the engine's running. I don't think this lasts for very long because the relay burns itself out, and that's probably why the bike doesn't run anymore. This is kind of conjecture, it's based on a bit of research, but I believe that's why some of these bikes have a problem starting. Now, I've been told by a friend that a way to test if the relay's failed or not is to bypass it by bridging these two terminals. It's not without risk. You should probably do it with a proper jump lead or cable. I'm going to use, though, a bit of our plumbing pipe. So the bike is on, the keys are in, the starter switch, it's not in the start position, it's just in the normal run position. Let's see what happens. Oh, stumbled a bit, let's try that again. there we go. She is alive. So that suggests to me that it is the starter relay. So I probably could have got away with not replacing the fuel pump and regulator and everything in there. I think I would have had to replace the switch anyway, because mine was quite sticky and I could never get it unstuck. But that suggests the starter relay is the problem. And as if by magic, thanks to the wonders of time travel, I have a replacement relay. This was 30 quid, £30 off eBay second hand. A brand new one will set you back 60 or 70. Gone are the days when a relay was £5 or £10, because it's all built into one sub-assembly now. You've got the electrical connector there, you've got the two fuses either side, you've got the terminals under this cover for the positive and negative feed, and then the relay's built into this unit here. So I'm now going to go about fitting that. So, time to get this solenoid replaced. First thing I've done, because I'm working on the electrics, is to disconnect the earth. I've separated it with this sponge that's dry to make sure it doesn't accidentally make contact again. The next thing to do is to disconnect this connector, and to do that you need to first loosen off this fuse box, which is done by pressing down, I think, on this tab. I did it and then pulled the fuse box out, so it's just a bit loose. So you can then get to this, and to remove this connector you have to go round the back, and I think it was I think I pushed in on the tab on the back and then it clicked. It's pretty obvious when you've got it right, because there'll be a fairly positive click, and then you should be able to pull this tab right off. Once you've done that, you can then take off this clear plastic cover, move it out of the way. Then you need to unbolt the two battery connections and remove them, and then looking at the spare one, which is here, it's just got two slots in the bottom, if you can see there. A bit blurry, I apologise. And I've noticed on the bike, you can see there is a vertical tab on each one, so it may just lift off with a bit of wiggling. I'll try that now. And just like that, by getting my thumb and finger around it and wiggling it back and forward, it just pulls straight off the tabs. It's not actually sitting on anything inside the bike, it's just a mud guard underneath that with the two tabs either side. And you've got the connector there for the external programmer that you can plug in. So, time to fit the new one, or the second hand one. Hope it works, and see if she goes. And that all went back in fairly easily, so now for the moment of truth. Always a nervous one, this. She's alive. Let's see if anything happens. Yes. And she's running. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.